Welcome to Laurie's Little Studio. I'm Laurie, and today I'm working on this. The prepping phase to a sewing project may seem kind of tedious and somewhat unnecessary. I find that if I take the time to make sure I have the items I need before I start a sewing project, really saves me valuable time. So here I have my washed fabrics, my pattern pieces, which look like they're in complete disarray. I have some fusible interfacing that I've never tried before. I just got this. I ordered it on Amazon, and I kind of thought, what the heck, I'm going to try this. Never seen it, never heard of it, and we're going to kind of take a peek at this. But anyway, so moving on, I've got all, the pattern pieces and the fabrics. I've already threaded up my sewing machine. I have some pins. I have clips. I have a new sewing needle all ready to go in my sewing machine. I have a pair of pinking shears in addition to my bent handle Kai scissors for cutting fabrics. I also have a pair of scissors that I have marked with one of these little strips of fabric to let me know that these scissors are for cutting paper. These are strictly for my fabrics, basically organic materials. Occasionally I will use my Kai scissors for synthetic fabrics, but I almost always use these when I'm cutting anything like a heavy polyester or a synthetic or paper or plastic. I just don't like to use my expensive scissors for that. So there's that. I may not need these scissors, but if I decide I do want them, I have them ready to go. I have an iron. I have some peel starch. I'm going to probably, most definitely, I'm going to need a friction marking pen. I have blue as well as black. This is a heat erase ink, and I like to use those for marking where my notches are. If there's any specific special markings that might end up showing, in other words, they're not outside of the seam allowance, I'll probably end up using some chalk in white, pink, blue, and yellow. Now, I would have to test to make sure that this is removable from these fabrics before I would consider using it. So I always try to cut a little swatch and do a test on all of these marking methods. I also have my hazel bag. What is a hazel bag, you ask? Well, my hazel bag is a little bag that I made a couple years ago, and I keep all kinds of things in here in this bag that I might need to use in the event that it's just kind of one of those situations where I need something in the project, but I don't know what it is yet. I don't know how else to say it. I mean, I have really strange random things. I have gloves. This zipper is for a project I'm working on. I have some double-sided tape. I have my tape measure. I have some glue stick. This is purple and it dries clear. The reason I like to use the purple is because I want to know where it is. If I'm drawing on my fabric or something else, I need to see the glue and I need to know where it is. And then it dries over time. I have some regular tape. I have a clover marking pencil. I like the clover marking pencils, but sometimes they end up being permanent when you kind of need them to not be permanent. A lot of this stuff in here is just strange, weird things. Here is, I believe, water erase. Yeah, this is a water erase pencil. Sometimes I use these. Just a random assortment of things that are in here. And off to the side over there, I have OmniGrid rulers, a rotary cutter, you know, just things that you might not need, might need, hard to say. And I'm now going to go ahead and get started. What does getting started look like? Well, for others, it could be completely different than it is for me. For me, it is clearing off an area in front of me where I can work. So I'm going to set aside the things like the pens that I don't need right now. I don't need the chalk right now. I don't need this. Probably will need that. I know I'm not ready to cut my fabric yet, so I'm going to set these off to the side. I don't know yet about the marking pens and my pattern pieces. So I'm going to leave these here in front of me, and I'm going to remove my fabric. And if you've been following me, you're aware of the fabric. We'll discuss this quickly and then move on. So this is a very fine, very transparent, but pretty white eyelet. I think you can see the little eyelets. I'll just open out one layer. So here is the eyelet fabric. So the Felicity fabric that I found on Amazon is a nice cotton fabric. It would be ideal for a summer type garment. This is going to be a lining, but it will be separate for this because this is so sheer that it would only be suitable as something to be worn over a heavier fabric or something to be worn under a fabric, not by itself ideally. It's just too sheer. And that may not be true for everyone, but in my daughter's case, she would prefer to have something that could be worn for modesty's sake. So there's that. And we're prepping. We're getting our project ready, which is very important to just kind of take a minute and get ready. Now, in the middle of all that, I want to kind of take a peek at this. Having never used it before, I ordered what says lightweight, and if I remember correctly, it's 3 yards. Yeah, it's 40 inches by 3 yards. And it is supposed to be fusible. It's non-woven, so it will add stiffness to your fabric, which is what an interfacing would do. And it says here, best uses are for quilts and crafting projects, cuffs, collars, pockets, handbags, lapels, necklines, and waistbands. And I believe it is for either for both a collar, placket, and a waistband that I needed interfacing. But I want to see what it feels like. I'm looking for single layer. Here we go. Okay, it's easy to see that this is the side that you would iron onto, and this is the glue side. This has a kind of a sheen that I have literally no idea if that's showing up on the camera or not. But it looks like it was just kind of sprayed on. It's in a random pattern, like when painters take a toothbrush and kind of flick their paintings. But it feels like it's completely covered all of the interfacing. So I think I'll be okay. As long as the glue works, I think this will be a good product. We'll give it a little review. Okay, and also, if you followed me for a while, you know that I have 2 patterns that I'll be using, the Burda and the McCalls. So I'll be trimming out. I'm not going to trace. Many people will trace their patterns, but I've learned I'm adding work for myself when I do that. For the longest time, I would trace and then use the traced pattern, thinking to myself, I might use this again. There has never been a time in the history of my sewing that I have gone back to a garment pattern to reuse. Most of the craft patterns that I have, for example, a bag pattern, actually have the 3 sizes or the 2 sizes in the pattern. So I've not ever had a need to trace out a pattern for a craft. And I have stopped adding that chore to my garments because this will not get used again. It would likely be used to make a garment for the same person. So the size would more than likely be the same. I'm not going to trace. I've just decided that's not a good use of my time. The prepping phase of a project is extremely important. Also on the checklist, washing fabric, tracing and or cutting pattern pieces, reading through the entire instructions before I begin, and blocking out the time I want to sew on that day. I put an asterisk beside that last item because it is very important to me to make sure I won't be frustrated by interruptions or appointments. Life happens, and sometimes there will be unplanned moments that will take time away from the scheduled sewing time. That is to be expected. I try to be mindful of my time. I feel it is important to creatives to make sure that the desire to create is fulfilled. To be honest, sometimes we can plan for creative time all we want, and the time works out, and our space to create is perfect, and for whatever reason, the vision of our project does not meet our expectations. That can also be very frustrating. My method for dealing with that little surprise is to give myself a tea break of about 5 to 10 minutes. I will remove myself from my studio, fix a cup of tea, this happens to be Paris blend, and walk outside if it isn't raining, and just breathe. It's a little mini refresher. When I return to the studio, often I find that I can get back on track without the stress and frustration derailing my planned sewing time. If you have limited space to cut out the fabric pieces, it may be easier to measure small amounts of fabric and then cut your yardage into the small pieces to fit your pattern. This method can be a risky endeavor as it may cause issues with the design that is printed or woven onto your fabric. In that case, it isn't recommended. But if you're able to cut the pieces out on the floor, that may be your best option. One of the houses that we lived in when my children were young had a great big kitchen floor, and back in those days I had no problem using it as a cutting surface. That would not be possible for me currently. So I use my dining room table if I need a large area to work from. I also have used a pool table for that purpose. So just kind of repurpose something, some surface in your home that will accommodate your physical requirements and give you enough of a cutting space. And as I said earlier, the other option is to look at your pattern and, like if there's a sleeve, go ahead and measure out the amount of fabric that you're going to need to cut that sleeve. You're going to need 2 most likely. And just cut that out on your table wherever you would normally be sewing. if it won't interfere with or wreck the design that's printed or woven into your fabric. Otherwise, you're going to need a larger space. Okay, so my plan is to prep what I can today and then bring it back tomorrow. So this video will likely be in several installments. I mean, I say that sometimes and then I finish the entire project. I'm never sure. And now that my husband is back at work rather than working from home, I have a little bit more time to create. Speaking of that, I am also going to paint another Father's Day card. We celebrated Father's Day in early June as all of our kids were available then. And I don't want to let the actual day just sail by without a made-by-me card and maybe a home-baked pastry or something. So I'm going to go ahead now, look at this, get my patterns all put back, and start trimming them out. This will likely be on a time lapse. I don't know how much of it I'm going to include because cutting out pattern pieces isn't really fun to watch. I don't think. Might be that I'm wrong about that, but we'll see. So what I need to do when I'm looking at this, of course, most people don't have two patterns. Some do, but you know, often when you're sewing something, all of the pattern pieces are included in one envelope. But I'm sewing two completely different things. A skirt from Burda and a top from McCall's. But I want to make sure that, of course, I'm looking at the Burda pattern that I can then include in the pattern envelope. I don't want to get the McCall's pattern and the Burda pattern mixed up, in other words. Okay, so I don't know if this is even showing up, but it is the cutting layout, and I don't want to constantly be stressing this piece of paper out. So I'm going to try to figure out a way to preserve it, and I think that way will be to put it on a piece of paper. My plan is to have my pattern pieces taped down to a piece of fairly heavy paper. It's not super heavy, but it's not just your regular copy paper. Oh, I think I need a piece of tape right here. It seems to want to come up. Okay, boop. There. All right, so if I can fold it. And let's see how it fits in here. Perfect. So I'm just going to write the word layout on it on both sides. If I'm not using the pattern and someone else happens to find it, they'll understand what this is. Right here. Burda is a German pattern. It appears to be written mainly in German. We're going to have centimeters. I prefer inches. So the 114 centimeters is 45-inch wide fabric, give or take, you know, a little bit here and there. And the 140 centimeter wide fabric is actually 55 inches wide So I have marked both 45 inches there, 55 inches here. Why is that important? Well, this layout refers to view A, 45-inch wide fabric, view A, 55-inch wide fabric, view B, 45-inch wide, view B, 55-inch wide. So my particular view that I will be using to cut out the eyelet fabric will be this right here. Even though that fabric is 54 inches wide, I'm still going to use this right here because the pattern pieces that I will be cutting out for Jessica will likely be smaller, cut out smaller than the pattern pieces that I have, because this is a size 8 skirt and she is probably half that. So I have a toile for her. However, for the Felicity fabric, I will be using this because that fabric is 45 inches wide. So I need both of these two views for this particular project. All right, so in the meantime, so I don't lose it, I'm going to put this back here in the envelope. Other features of the Burda pattern system, you will have a size guide on the pattern paper. So here we see the European across the top, the US across the top, size range. So we're going to be looking at size 6, even though this pattern is designed for size 8 through size 18, I believe. I'm going to be leaning more toward less than a size 8. So this is what you will have. It gives you a guide off to the side over here, numbered 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, and 12. And over here on the drawing of the person, we have the numbers from this on this. So for number 1, US, it's 66 1/8 inch. And that is the measurement from the top of her head to her feet. So someone who is 66 1/8 inches tall is between 5 feet 6 inches and 5 feet 7 inches tall. Well, Jessica is nowhere near that, so I'll have to get an adjustment if for some reason this comes into play. So I may have to wait until she gets back from Australia before I do any of this skirt stitching. If not, we'll continue. Okay, so the second one, number 2, is on here. It is the bust measurement. Well, that one doesn't even come into play on a skirt. So that's what this is right here. And I just recommend that you don't throw it away. Keep it with the pattern. And then we have our legend right here. Now, on most US patterns, this information, as well as the layout, is printed on the instruction sheet that comes with your pattern. For some reason, this particular pattern company and others I've run across in the past, maybe Vogue, I'm thinking maybe Vogue had this as well, but your key to symbols or your legend is right here, and it will tell you what you're looking at on your instructions as well as on your pattern pieces. before I do any fabric cutting, before I pin the pattern down and cut out my fabric, I have to iron these pattern pieces. They are ridiculously wrinkled. And if they're wrinkled, they're smaller. If they're smooth, they're larger. So there could be a huge variance in size. And if you cut it out without pressing it, you're not getting an accurate representation of that pattern piece. So I'm not going to fold them up and put them in the envelope and then take them out and put them on my fabric. I am going to take them out, press them, put them on my fabric, pin them down, cut them out, and that will give me my best, absolute best representation of the size that I'm trying to cut. But I also have to locate the toile that I made, which I've seen recently, and I need to measure it against the pattern pieces. Before I get the toile for the skirt, there's one thing I want to say about this McCall's pattern. I know a lot of times as a novice, we go to the fabric store or we purchase a pattern because we like the way this looks. We like the way it fits. And I do recommend that you look at every single thing about a pattern before you purchase it. The sewn version of this pattern is exactly what it is. So at a glance, we see an interesting neckline. It buttons down the front. It has puffy sleeves. It has little ruffles. But we don't notice at a glance that the waistband or the waist hem is a little bigger than you would expect on that particular shirt, right? I think I'm right. It's got a little bit of give to it. So that is something to keep in mind. Okay, the other thing I wanted to say is we get it home, we're all excited, and then we take the pattern out and we look at this and think to ourselves, oh my goodness gracious, what have I gotten myself into? I'm going to adjust the light so that you might be able to see a little better. So can you see all those lines? And see that there is this interesting, what is that? Oh my, this is called a split dart. And we have our lengthen and shorten lines. We have cut here for A or B hem, come all the way down here and cut for a different hem, and here's this weird marking for a waistline, and all these weird straight lines for buttons, and I think there should even be some different crazy markings on this one. And then, oh lordy mercy, what is this right here? So this is a sleeve, and it's a bell-shaped sleeve. I mean, there you go. This is some kind of crazy pattern. And you might think, why did I buy this and I can't ever do it? And the answer to those two things are you bought it because you like it, and absolutely yes you can. So if you fear that you won't do a good job the first time, if you fear that this is going to cause you anxiety and stress and you're just not going to be able to do this, make a toile. Make it first out of an old sheet. Go to Goodwill, buy a big sheet, cut this out, put it together. Now you've done that once, and now you go, oh wait, I remember when I was putting in the sleeve, that was kind of weird, and I figured out that you have to do fill in the blank, right? So that is a great way to get that first time making it feeling out of the way. Now, interestingly, this pattern has this little preparing pattern block, and it tells you that this mark right here that's located throughout the pattern indicates the bust line, the waist line, and or biceps. So remember when I was talking about when you measure the upper arm, you want to get the meatiest part? That's what this is here for. Okay, so the measurements refer to circumference of finished garment. Body measurement plus wearing ease plus design ease. And you might need to adjust your pattern if necessary. So if you have lengthen or shortening issues at hand, there's some lines to help you with that. If it tells you exactly how to lengthen and how to shorten. And then it tells you correctly that you should transfer all the tissue markings to the fabric before removing the pattern. So don't take out the pins, don't remove the clips, make the markings, and then remove the pins and the clips. This is the seam line. They're 5/8 of an inch from the cut edge of the fabric unless otherwise indicated. And sometimes there will be in the pattern instructions a note that says insert sleeve doing this, seam allowance is 3/8 of an inch. Not 5/8 but 3/8. Okay, tells you where to put the buttons, tells you where to put the buttonholes, and then all of the symbols that they use for matching up the seams and for the construction details. So the centers, the fold lines, the placement lines, etc. are clearly marked. And if you need to, you can thread trace. Thread tracing is when you take pieces, you take a needle and thread and you take giant stitches to mark where those particular lines are. And if we have to, I will show you that as well when we're putting the shirt together. But I wanted to mention, it looks a little frightening if you're new to sewing. It is definitely an advanced pattern. It's not for those who have not sewn before. But then again, if you're gonna sew and you like this pattern, there is literally no reason why you can't practice one time and then sew it. Just do what makes your heart happy. But we're not going to get into this one just yet. All right, so this is a toile, and basically this is just made from some old Kona cotton that I used to sell in my shop, and I moved here from Kansas, where my shop was located, with an entire bolt of this fabric. And to be honest, I got so sick and tired of looking at this color that by the time I got to the end of the bolt, I just decided to use it to make this toile. Okay guys, so a whole lot has happened in the 2 days since I filmed the video that you just saw. We're trying to get our youngest daughter ready to go to Australia, and she's leaving tomorrow. And in the meantime, our oldest daughter and son-in-law from Oregon are moving to our area, to Mukilteo, and they have to do it within a month. So it's a job relocation. It's fantastic. I'm so excited. And there's been just a lot of activity. So that's another thing about preparing to sew. You really need some dedicated time. You know, a couple times I thought about coming in here and just ironing these pattern pieces and laying out the fabric and getting and I just should not do that, because already in my head I'm thinking, but I haven't starched my fabric yet. And if you've followed me for a while, you know that is truly what I do. I starch the fabric, I let it sit and rest, I press it, and then I press this, and then I get that all laid out, then I cut out my pieces. So rather than make a mistake because I want to hurry up and rush, I'm just going to stop this video at this point and then pick it back up. Probably today's Friday, Saturday, tomorrow is when the flight to Australia occurs for her, and she won't be here to wear it. So when she returns, it'd be nice if I could give it to her. So I have like 8 days to get it done. But the fun thing is my husband and I are going to go do some open houses tomorrow to help Candice and Rob. And kind of, I mean, when you don't have much time to get moved, it's kind of a good idea to, you know, use the family and friends that you have who can help you. So we're going to go look at a few houses for them and see what we can find out. And I probably won't be sewing tomorrow, but I do have a paint video that I will edit and upload. It is for my husband. I did for Father's Day, which of course is the day after tomorrow. And I don't want to upload the video until after Father's Day because I don't want him to see what I painted. So anyway, if you liked this video, want to see more of basically how to set up to sew, and I try to make sure that my videos can be followed by someone who doesn't have a whole lot of hours under their belt at the sewing machine. Please leave a question if you've got a question in the comment section below the show notes. And if you've not subscribed, please consider doing so. Would love to have you join us here at Laurie's Little Studio. And go ahead and like that like button. And I will see you in the next video. Thank you for watching. Bye.